Welcome everybody to the Introduction to OrangeBoy Savannah webinar. Today we're going to go over some information about Savannah and walk through the tool. My name is Molly Mansfield. I am part of the member services team and I'm on the OrangeBoy and the BiblioCore implementation teams.
And
And
I'm
with me
Molly
is,
Sum.
sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I'm Molly Sum. I'm the manager of analytics and technology here at CCS and the project lead on the Savannah implementation project. So today we're going to start with some context around the OrangeBoy Savannah project. What is OrangeBoy? What is Savannah? How does that fit into our reporting ecosystem? Why did CCS choose to do this project? Then we will talk about accessing and navigating around Savannah, and we'll give you some important information about a concept Savannah uses to group patrons called clusters. And then we'll log into Savannah and do a live demo. There will be plenty of time for questions. You're more than welcome to put questions in the chat. You'll also get a copy of these slides afterwards, so please don't feel the need to take copious notes or memorize anything. We're going to get you a copy of the information that we talk about here today. Go ahead. So, Governing Board had previously asked CCS to research tools that could be used to conduct data analysis projects across all CCS libraries. And OrangeBoy was one of those tools that was evaluated and recommended by CCS, and we signed a contract with OrangeBoy in October of last year. OrangeBoy is the company that offers the Savannah tool, and Savannah is the platform itself where the data and the reports are located. So if we are discussing the development team or the company, we might just say OrangeBoy. If we're talking about the platform itself, we might just say Savannah. I'll try to use those terms together as frequently as possible in the coming months so that everyone gets used to associating those together. And go ahead to the next one. So why does CCS think that this is going to be a valuable tool? The first thing that we are excited about with the Savannah platform is that it's a place for CCS to build custom reports. So things are a little bit different with this training in that we're inviting you into a tool that's still in development. We're going to show you everything that's available right out of the box. We just want to make it very clear that we know that's not all Savannah is going to offer, and that primarily CCS is going to be using this to build custom reports. And that customization isn't done yet, but we still want to give everyone the opportunity to log in, see what's available out of the box, and start thinking about what custom reports might be useful for you. The second piece of value that this provides is that it's a consolidated location for data from multiple sources. So it acts as a data warehouse to get reporting on ILS data alongside e-content provider data, programming, app usage, gate counts, computer use, all those types of things. Anything that we might not be able to pull into simply reports or web reports. The third concept is clusters, and that's what I mentioned earlier, and we'll talk in depth about clusters later. But those are the built-in user personas that Savannah uses to group patrons together by their activity. And lastly, I know our members are really excited about Market Watch, which is Savannah's built-in map visualization so that you can visualize census demographics and active cardholders and households for your library on a map. I'm going to take a moment to talk about how reporting tools at CCS work and what Savannah will do differently. Simply reports are the standard reports that are offered by Innovative for your Polaris data, and web reports are those custom reports that are built by CCS for the Polaris data. Savannah will have both. standard out of the box reports and custom reports built by CCS. But again, the main differentiator is going to be that Savannah will also include data from other sources. Another thing to keep in mind is that Savannah is going to aggregate data for you and give you summary information, and it's not the go-to place for title level or patron level reporting. So you're still going to rely on Simply Reports for that. Simply Reports and Web Reports are not going away. We're not replacing anything. We're adding to the available reporting tools at CCS.
Yeah, so one of the examples I've been giving in our trainings is if you are noticing something in Savannah, maybe certain clusters or certain types of materials that are very popular or underused, then you could go into Simply Reports to get that title level information or match the likes of your certain clusters to titles and do some collection development that way. But like Molly said, none of these are going away, so you'll still be able to get all of that data in a bigger holistic view.
Here I have a summary of our roadmap for the Savannah implementation. We had a phase of implementation that was scheduled to be completed in February. And so those are the data sources that we'll be talking about today. That includes our Polaris data, e-content data from Freegal, Hoopla, Cloud Library, Canopy, Mango, Overdrive, and Beanstack, as well as the built-in mapping reports for MarketWatch at a CCS-wide level. You may be aware that we're working with you right now to get computer use data in place. Most of our libraries don't associate that with a patron identifier, so it won't affect anything that we see in the standard reports. Um, but we will cover that in a separate training in the future. Between now and July, we're also going to be working on data from Easy Proxy, Open Athens, Cisco Meraki, SendSource, Communico, Library Market, Gale, spreadsheets for gate count and programming data if you track those manually, as well as some stretch goals for sources like ProQuest, EBSCO, and Palace Project for those that have switched to Palace Project. And then finally, IPLAR data. So we're looking at IPLAR data in two ways right now. The first is um, allowing libraries to run reports on past IPLAR data in Savannah, so you can find CCS libraries that are similar to you in various IPLAR categories. And the second is that we know IPLAR reporting is painful sometimes when we're considering all of these data sources. So we are working with OrangeBoy already to develop a custom report that will roll up this data in the categories that you need to report for IPLAR so that even if we don't have 100% of your data sources, we're cutting down the number of places you have to check manually and add together when you do IPLAR reporting. And we know that that won't be useful until we have a full year's worth of data in place, but we also know it's really important. We've already gotten member feedback on it, so we want to make sure we're getting a head start on that. For any data sources that are automated, that data is synced to OrangeBoy weekly. So you'll typically see those updates on a Monday or Tuesday, and that's when the data in Savannah will change. Once we complete this initial implementation phase for the Savannah project, we'll move into a secondary phase where we're focused more on custom requests. So any custom reports that you may need, any data sources that aren't part of this initial phase of implementation that are really important for your library, or other data analysis projects where you want CCS support is going to be our focus after July. We will talk more about that later, but just because we don't plan to start that until the second half of the year doesn't mean that you can't tell us about it now. All right. Firstly, when we talk about who is going to be using Savannah, we just want to remind everyone that we're expecting the primary user for Savannah to be CCS staff. We're going to be in there building custom reports. That's really what the platform is for. But we want to invite you all in. So I've been telling everybody that you are welcome to be as involved in this development process as you like. We want to give you the option. But if after today's training you say, this isn't for me, I don't want to be logged into Savannah building anything or trying to interpret the data that's in there, that's okay. The purpose of this project is that CCS has a platform and a person who can help support your data analysis needs. And if you don't have a data person at your library, CCS can help supplement those projects for you. So if you have someone at your library who's really interested in this data and you want to log in and you want to be running reports and giving us feedback and helping influence how CCS customizes this for the future, awesome. Glad to have you on the team. If you don't want to think about Savannah after today until you have a specific use case and you need CCS support to complete a specific project, also 100% fine. So just know that those two paths are equally valid, and we're here to support you in the way that works best for you. Nothing about Savannah is an obligation for your library to do. Um, for the staff who will get the most use out of this, if it's a tool that you are interested in getting more hands-on with, admin staff or staff who work with a large variety of data already at the library are going to find this the most useful right now. Staff who contribute to board reports, strategic planning, or annual goal setting is another category. In the future, we might have specific custom reports that are valuable for team members who are only interacting with a specific type of data for a specific type of task, but day one out of the box, it's probably not as useful for them. Then lastly, I want to give a little bit of context about data use and security because I know we've had questions about that come up. Savannah does not report on the individual materials checked out by your patrons. I mentioned that earlier. Savannah does not know the specific titles that your patrons are interacting with, so you don't have to worry about that. We do get information about general types of materials, and that informs the clusters. But again, no title level information is coming into Savannah. Savannah reports utilize aggregated data. So again, you're not going to get a list of patrons from any of these standard reports. If you need a list of patrons based on a Savannah report, let us know, open a help desk ticket. We can help you get that, but it's not part of the standard reports we're going to look at today. OrangeBoy does not sell or share our data. CCS is retaining ownership of all of the data. There are secure protocols in place for transferring and storing the data. And OrangeBoy's complete data privacy policy is linked on the OrangeBoy FAQ on the CCS website. So you are more than welcome to read through that. And if you have any questions about the data use, reach out with a help desk ticket. And if we don't have the answer for you, we'll work with OrangeBoy to get the answer that you need. That is the end of my context about the project. If you have more detailed questions, feel free to reach out to me. We also have the FAQ on the website. I will hand it over to Molly to get into the weeds of the Savannah tool itself, but I will be in the chat answering any questions that come up. So if you have any questions about anything I just covered or questions that come up while Molly is presenting, I will stay on top of those in the chat.
Thank you. So first we're going to talk about how to access OrangeBoy Savannah. We do have I'm so sorry. I keep getting like a weird little pop-up, so I apologize. We do have the link. We'll have the link on the member tools A to Z. You should already be able to see linked information like the FAQ on our website. You can also go directly to Savannah's website, which we'll go into in just a moment. So there's a couple ways to get into the tool. You should receive an email with a username and password if you were signed up for this webinar. If you haven't received one, or if you have colleagues that would like to get a username and password, the best thing to do is to put in a help desk ticket. Once you put in your help desk ticket, you'll receive an email directly from OrangeBoy Savannah with login information. And from there, you can log in. If for some reason you do forget your password, there's the forgot password next to the teal login button. That's the quickest way to get your password reset. Again, they'll send you an email, get that reset, and you're good to go to get back into the system. Any questions you have about that, please don't hesitate to send a help desk ticket. We're more than happy to help you get access to the tool. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about navigating through Savannah. It's quite easy to navigate. In the upper right-hand corner of the screen, when you do log in, you should see your username and the ability to change your password as well as to log out. On the upper right-hand corner of the screen, when we go in there, you'll be able to see that in the side navigation, there's some additional information. And then we get into the home screen of the tool. You'll see there the way that it's set up is with cards and different sets of information based on what data they're presenting to us. And again, if you don't already have a login, please put in a help desk ticket and we will get you a login and password. One of the great tools that are within Savannah is their knowledge base. Their knowledge base is a great resource for better understanding some of the terminology and the way that they put together the data. You can see you'll click into the knowledge base from the home screen. It's right under home. And from there, you'll be able to get information about the clusters. You'll get their updated webinars, any new documentation they've put out. So it's a really great tool. I use it regularly, even just to remember what the different clusters are. So it's something that is definitely useful. So we're going to start by talking about some of the clusters. So the way that Savannah is built is clusters are really the backbone of a lot of the information that you're getting. And their clusters are set up a little bit differently than some of the other tools that we've seen that cluster or sort of put together our patrons. And one thing to notice as we're in the system is that they're calling your patrons customers. So I might use that interchangeably. I'm used to saying patrons, but if it's referring to a customer, that's your patrons. So with the cluster segmentation, what they're doing is they're dividing your patrons into groups based on certain criteria. And this criteria is different than you might have seen in other tools. They're not using like consumer reports data. They're really pulling behaviors from the ILS and from the other data sources that we have and identifying those behaviors over time to determine where a patron fits in the cluster. The clusters are there to help you understand and target specific types of groups or patrons that you have to best appeal to their interests and their priorities. You might want to think about things like which are the most common clusters for my patrons, or what do I want my patron experience to be like based upon these clusters. But again, as we go through, they're different than some of the other tools in that they're not using the sort of traditional consumer reports. They're really looking at behaviors from the data sources that we have. And so what I mean with that is that they are calculating their clusters in a few different ways. The first way that patrons are calculated as clusters is they're going to go into that new cardholders cluster. So any patron that's signed up within the first 12 weeks of their sign up, they are considered a new cardholder. And these new cardholders will hang out there for 12 weeks, irregardless of how old they are, or other behaviors. And what Savannah is trying to do is establish some patterns of behavior so they can move them into a different cluster. Clusters are not permanently assigned. They are very flexible. So you will see that your clusters change as we are getting data on that weekly basis. And once that patron has been in that first cluster of new cardholder, then you can see in the middle with that arrow going down is they are now going to go into the next stage, which is when did they use their card last? So if they've used their card more than 12 weeks, but less than a year, maybe a couple times, they'll be considered that occasional in the middle there. If they've used their card more than a year ago, they are considered inactive. And then the next step down under lapsed cardholders are the age-based cardholders. So your age-based cardholders are determined on the birthday that's available in Polaris. So I know that at CCS, we've, for the most part, been collecting accurate birthdays. If for some reason at your library you're using like a placeholder birthday, like 1/1/2000, just know that these clusters are not going to be completely accurate because they are pulling that birth date information off of the patron's registration. But the way that our age-based clusters work is they're going to look at how old that patron is, and if they're under 13, then they are considered a rising star. If they are between the age of 13 and 17, they're considered a bright future. And so the age-based cardholders are determined again by the birth date in the registration. That's also going to affect when we start using BiblioCommons and BiblioCore, because your patrons can have a different view if they're under the age of 18. So if you want that to be accurate, it's good to make sure those birthdays are collected. Um, so I'm going to move on to the next slide that's going to show us an illustration of the different clusters. So you can see once we've moved through that first column of new cardholders, occasionals, inactives, the bright futures, the rising stars, now we're looking at everyone else. There's one or two more cluster situations. There's like an unknown, which you might see. And that's based on the fact that that patron just does not have behaviors that are predictable. So they might be doing things in the system, but because it's not the same or that predictable situation, they're going to sit in that unknown until they have some sort of predictability in their behaviors. But you can see as long as they're active, they've been in the system for more than 12 weeks, then they get to go to some of these different clusters like audiophiles, digitarians, page turners, and you can see in the middle the blue where it says computer use down to audiobooks. That's the behavior that's going to help push them into those different clusters. So I'm going to go into my next screen to better illustrate some of this, and then we can talk a little bit more. So the way that Savannah is doing their clusters is they always do a primary and a secondary. So the primary is the actual behavior that they're measuring in order to determine that cluster. So very simple on the screen. If it's, the new card holders past 12 weeks, occasionals are infrequent, inactive, have not used, bright futures, and rising stars are based on their ages. But then we go a little bit further and then we get into those other clusters. And we have three clusters that are hard for our libraries to identify based on the type of information that they draw from. So the eventfuls are based on library programs. And a lot of our libraries are not collecting program level data on patron records. So it might be hard to determine the cluster of eventfuls. Another cluster that can be tricky is the staying connected, which is towards the bottom. That is tied with library computer use. So if you are using MyPC, TBS, or one of those other tools to collect login information like numbers of usage, then we can pull that data in, and we have one library so far that's doing that. But if you're not collecting at a patron level, which most of us aren't for using library computers, that staying connected might be a little bit low or not there at all. And then the other one is the Wi-Flyers, which is library Wi-Fi on a personal device. Most libraries are not doing this. Most libraries in the country are not doing this because it is a large barrier to use. If you do collect some sort of library Wi-Fi information, it could be used later on, but at this time, if we're not collecting that at a patron level, then we won't be able to identify the Wi-Flyers. Not saying that you need to do any of that, just explaining why you might be missing some of your clusters. But then you can see from here, we've got the audio files that are driven by their physical audiobook usage, bedtime stories, which are adults checking out children's materials. Dependables are your adult print users who are usually, in there regularly, looking at the displays, talking to people who work there. Digitarians are using primarily streaming materials. Double features are those patrons that can check out a ton of DVDs over the weekend, watch them all, return them. They're using that part of the collection pretty heavily. And then your page turners are mostly adult print again, maybe some teen print. And then that secondary use is what they've identified based on behaviors within the Savannah ecosystem, not necessarily drawing towards that particular cluster, but it does kind of give you an idea of what additional behaviors there might be.
And any data that we don't have at a patron level, you can still run reports on in Savannah. We'll still be able to give you an overview at the organization level. It just won't impact the clusters. So it's just good to know about your library that you're not going to see a staying connected cluster in your group, and that's okay.
Yeah, and that's something that OrangeBoy has identified as they're not seeing that very much as well in their system. They're also going to offer some engagement opportunities. So, your new cardholders might benefit from a welcome message campaign. Your Bright Futures might benefit from promoting the library's digital and physical resources. And again, this is where our other reporting tools come in because you could use Simply Reports to identify patrons that have been signed up within the last 12 weeks. And then you can reach out to them and be able to connect with them if you needed. So there's some overlap in the reporting tools and ways that you can use them to be useful for your library. And again, clusters with their engagement opportunities, these are all recommendations at the Orange Boy level, again, seen within their ecosystem, and things that they recommend that you could do in order to keep engagement or up engagement. So I'm going to pause really quick. I think I saw some questions in the chat. I don't know if we need to take any now, and I'm going to go over to the Savannah platform and get ready to do a demo of that. So I did see a question. I'll just go ahead and answer it right now. Can people be in more than one cluster? They're not in more than one cluster at a time. Like once they're in a cluster, that's their cluster they're in, but they can move to a different cluster. So they're only going to have that one cluster at a time. They might move into a different cluster, and that really comes from those different behaviors that they might see. Okay, so this is Savannah if you haven't been in there already. Try to make there we go. So you can see that you can log in right here by clicking the login button, and that will go straight into the platform. You might have seen a lot of pictures of cats as they were rotating. They last December, I think, requested if people wanted to send in their cat pictures. And so all of those are cat pictures from Savannah customers and their cats. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the homepage and your knowledge base. So this is how you're going to get some helpful information if you need it. Again, if you hover over your name at the top, you can change your password, you can log out. Savannah tends to log you out at about 10-minute intervals, but it is a cloud-based tool. It doesn't have really personal identifiable information, but it's recommended to log out if you were to walk away from the tool. And then something else to know about Savannah right away is that we are their first consortium. So Savannah sees CCS as a single library, and the individual libraries are more like a branch. What this means is that when you come into the tool, you're going to see that home with the amount of active cardholders, the change in active cardholders, and the cardholders signed up in the last week. Those are CCS wide cardholders. Once we click into some of the business intelligence reports at the lower part of the screen, then you'll be able to see some places we can single down to just a single library or a branch location. But it's just important to remember that when we start off, library in this regard is CCS, and then we drill down to your individual libraries.
This is also important to remember when you're requesting access for other staff members. Anyone who has access to Savannah at this time has access to all of our data for all of CCS libraries. So we have put in feature requests with OrangeBoy to refine how they handle their user permissions. But right now, it's universal. If we add anything to the dashboard, it's available for everybody.
Yes, thank you. And that's also at this time, the way that things are added to the dashboard is they will continue to build the tiles at the bottom. I believe there is a way for if you have a custom report and it's just for your library that Molly can send it directly to you or set it up so you can see it. But for the most part, if a report ends up on the dashboard, it's because it's useful for all of CCS. And so everybody will be able to see the reports that are added to the dashboard. Okay. So we're going to start out at the new card holder. So I will just click on one of the tiles, this first tile here. And what it's going to do is it's going to open up a screen that has four different graphs and charts for me. And it does have some ability for us to drill down into the individual libraries. So let's just go ahead and kind of take a look at this. Again, so you can see it says new card holders at the top. The location page filter is where I can narrow down into my individual libraries. As it stands right now, we're looking at all of CCS and we're looking at all of the clusters. But if I were to go and pick, I'll just pick Algonquin because they're at the top. Now you can see that the new card holders are at 352. And then in these specific graphs, you'll be able to hover over any of them and get a snapshot of the data that they're presenting to you. So the monthly cardholders signups in the orange is new cardholders from the last year. The darker color that is the new cardholders from this year, and then the teal is still active. Patrons, we do have 2 years worth of data, so you'll see we'll be able to pull registration dates and behaviors. Some of the other places in the system, we don't have 2 years worth of data. 2 years is the standard amount of data within the system. And for those, you'll see as we're going, it's going to build up over time. So one example of that is our e-materials. We started collecting them in November. A lot of people got them to us in February. So you see a little bit of a spike. Over time, it's going to build up that data and you'll have two solid years. But again, I want to just show you. So we've got our new card holders in the last year, this year. If this is a little bit small or hard to see, there's a focus mode button that's going to take you into a bigger screen. So it's easier to see this information. If you wanted this as a table, you click on the three dots in the upper right-hand corner and click on Show as Table. And then down below, you'll have that information here for you as well. So you have a couple different views on how you want to see this data. Where the new cardholders went is going to build your clusters and tell you they were a new card holder 12 months after, or 12 weeks after being that new card holder. They're going to go somewhere. You can see that on a certain day for this library, the unknowns are 18, occasionals 22, and then you can see the rest of where those clusters went to. If you have multiple locations, then it is going to tell you your new card holder by location. And if you want to see their activity, then these new card holders, you're seeing the common types of materials or locations of those materials that these particular new card holders are using over time. Molly, was there anything you wanted to add on this screen before I move to the next tile?
I don't think so. I think you covered it all.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so now we're going to go back. Just use my little back button here. Now we're going to go into our clusters. So with clusters, this is showing us the distribution of the different clusters. Again, when we click in and we start seeing the screen as soon as it loads, um, we have the option to see all of CCS, and we have the option to narrow it down into our individual libraries. So one thing to notice though, when you are narrowing down, so I'm going to choose Algonquin again. A couple of my graphs did change. This particular Savannah-wide cluster compare does not change. So when they say my library, that is all of CCS libraries. And other Savannah libraries is all of the other libraries subscribe to Savannah in this ecosystem. We don't really know who all of these libraries are, so it's a kind of a work in progress. They do give you the ability to do a budget category. The lowest budget category they currently have is 10 million, and they have a population category. And I know that we've had lots of discussions about seeing if they can add some additional categories and make some changes to this, maybe saying CCS instead of my library. But you can see again that I can narrow it down by a specific library locations. So for Algonquin, you can see that after those occasionals, the digitarians are a really big cluster for them. They've got some that are unknown, and then they start going into bedtime stories and page turners. So you could do a comparison and see, okay, at my particular library, there are 16% of my patrons are digitarians. Across the Savannah ecosystem, 12.5%, or I'm sorry, across the CCS ecosystem, 12.5%, and as Savannah libraries, it's 5%. So Algonquin's doing pretty great with their digitarians right now. You also have the ability at the bottom to see by a weekly basis your clusters, how they might be changing or not changing. And then this utilization is showing you the type um, of cluster and the type of materials that these clusters are using. I'm going to pause and see if Molly want to add anything to that.
Um, this is important to remember that this is all based on the data that we have in Savannah. So a lot of you will probably see a higher concentration of digitarians right now because that is the type of data that we have. But once you start adding other types of activities that are measurable in Savannah, you might see some of those digitarians move to other clusters because we have that data available. So that's just something to keep in mind, and we're working on some both in report and supplemental guidance on being able to get a better picture of what libraries within CCS are tracking what types of data so that you know what you're comparing to. If you see a library similar to yours with a much smaller percent of digitarians, is that because we don't have their data yet? Is that because we do and it really is just lower usage? So we are preparing that context to help interpret these reports.
Yeah, and we have had a request, and I think we're going to be able to fill it to put on our website, similar to how we do with RFID information, just to let you know, like some sort of graph or a spreadsheet, what libraries are present or are sharing with us, so that you also have a sense of, well, if they're sharing Overdrive data or not, if they have a different type of data in there. So we'll have that listed out. And just as a reminder, since we're looking at the clusters, we do have Overdrive, and that's kind of the biggest e-materials. We have all the data from the ILS, and then whatever other resources you all have provided is what's there currently. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I am now going to look at our next tile, which is the occasionals. So they have a section broke out just for those patrons that we know are active in some way, but they're not using the library very frequently in any way. They're not able to be determined that they're using like a digital resource a lot or something from the ILS. It's probably just a couple of uses in total. So this screen is specifically for all of CCS. So you can see with our occasionals, you get a sense of the percentage of occasionals and the number, as well as the ones that went from occasional to inactive, and then ones that re-engaged. So they came out of occasional into a cluster. It's going to give you a sense of your months over time of activity. One thing that a lot of libraries have really liked to see, so we're looking into seeing if we can see this data in another place, is this age distribution. So again, really the age distribution only falls for the 0 to 12 and 13 to 17 across most of the system. This is providing a little more age distribution, and that's something I think we've are going to talk to OrangeBoy about or have talked to OrangeBoy about, seeing how we could break out some other ages beyond just those kids under 18. And then you get a sense of where the occasionals are moving to, as well as where they've moved from. But again, at this time, it's important to remember that this is CCS-wide data, and this is one of those screens that you're not able to drill down into your specific library.
We have requested that they add a location filter to this report. So
Thank you.
hopefully that will change soon, but for the moment, it's just CCS wide. And as we're looking at any of these reports, one of the nice things is that CCS has a duplicate report option. So if you see something, you're like, this is almost what I would need for my library, open a help desk ticket, let us know, because then we can potentially create a copy of that report and adjust it to what you actually need.
Okay, so next we're going to look at the youth. So the youth reports are set up in four different tabs. Your first tab is going to look at your 0 to 12s in both breakdown and utilization, and then you'll look at your 13 to 17s in breakdown and utilization. So this is one of the screens that you can narrow down into your individual library or libraries branches. And again, you're going to see the amount of cardholders from 0 to 12, as well as the amount of inactive cardholders. They do break down into two different charts. If they're engaged, which includes your new cardholders, all the way through inactive, and they're going to give you percentage and numbers. They're also going to break down your patrons active versus inactive. So active is orange, inactive is the green by the age distribution. So one thing again, if you're in this part of this tool and you feel like these numbers are off, there could be a couple things going on, but one that's probably the most common is that the patrons maybe don't have their birthdays in their account, or they don't have the correct birthday in the account. So if you have been using placeholders and you'd really like to see the age distribution a little more accurately, you might want to, as you continue to see patrons, update their birthdays. Otherwise, just know that this data is driven by the data that we have. And so if the birth date's in there, then we'll be able to see it in this distribution chart.
OrangeBoy also told us that based on the data that they have across Savannah libraries, that they do tend to see a higher percentage of inactive youth cardholders just because they're using the library but not in a measurable way. So either they're coming in, books are getting checked out on a parent's card, or they're coming in and they're teenagers using the space but not doing anything tied to their library card. They're not checking out a specific material, or you're not using cards to access computers, so there's no measurable way to identify that they were active in the library. So that's just some other context that they've provided for why that inactive might seem higher than you're experiencing in person at the library.
Yeah. Although if you're doing like school card drives and other things, it does look like across our system that we do have a bit more activity with the youth. So it would be interesting to watch over time and see if any of this changes. And then there's also a utilization tab here. So this utilization tab again is letting you choose an activity location. And you can also see that you'll be able to choose circulation. So that's your ILS data versus digital information. So with the number of clusters, you get a sense of, or the number of patrons, customers, you get a sense of the amount of patrons and what they are using. And then utilization number of items, again, you're getting how many of these particular items they are accessing and using. And right now I'm in the all filter, but I could go ahead and choose a library and that would change my view. But then you can see that, let's chat a little bit. Customers by week and activity category. The orange is our ILS data and the teal is our digital data. So for this particular library, we started getting digital data in February. Over time, again, this will build up, so you'll see the teal all the way across. And then same for this one with the previous year. We don't have previous year data for this part of the tool at this time. So as it builds up over time, you will be able to see that data as well. Same tab, just different age, again, with the ability to change a location. So this is for your 13 to 17-year-olds. Again, we know teenagers, if you've ever had teenagers, they might go to the library all the time, but they don't necessarily check out books or use some of the resources in an identifiable way. So you can see that their engagement is listed as well as if they're new card holders, occasional and actives, and then they're going to give you that percentage. And then again, active versus inactive for the different age distributions. So again, same as what Molly said about the younger kiddos, they might not be using their cards in a measurable way, as many of you had probably seen with teenagers at the library, but hopefully you're seeing some numbers that are a little bit close to what you anticipate. And if not, please let us know, but it just could be that you've got those teens that are just not that actively using their card. And then utilization is the same as the 0 to 12 utilization. You're going to again see the amount of patrons and the numbers of items that they're using. There is again that filter to just go digital. So if you have, looks like there's Hoopla, Canopy, and Overdrive that are listed here currently, and you can see that spike again of when we really started getting a lot of data. But then you'll have the week by week comparison with activity and the comparison of activity over time from year to year. So this one does have the ability to break it down into your individual libraries, which can be really helpful. But again, just remembering that, the youth behavior can sometimes be a little tricky to track. Okay, now we're going to go into customer activity over time. For customer activity over time, it's going to provide a system-wide view of activity using filters for location, cluster, date range, activity types. This is one that you can come into and choose a library. And again, when I choose it's the first one. And oh, one thing to notice too with this one, this for some reason the screen, and we have notified OrangeBoy. If you want to choose additional locations, this is one where you need to do a control when you click, and then it will let you grab as many locations as you want. You can also narrow it down by specific clusters. But again, it's going to show you by the number of patrons what the usage of materials are and then also the numbers of items by these different types. And then again, you're going to get that week by week comparison and a comparison year to year. I feel like there was one thing I also wanted to say. If I remember it, I will come back to it. So we've also got it broken out specifically by overdrive. So they are pulling out our overdrive data. And again, they're going to tell you your audience, where the items were borrowed from, like the type, the like collection type or the location type. And then also if you want to see just audiobooks, just ebooks, just magazines, those can be listed here as well. And this is what I was going to say earlier. We have reached out to OrangeBoy to help us better understand when they're pulling things like juvenile nonfiction, when they're pulling things where it's showing us certain material types or where something's coming from, just helping us better understand how they are identifying that. And for example, like with audiobooks, does that include things like um, the maybe something that has a reader in it? Does that, what exactly falls under that category? So they're going to get us something to better understand how those material types are represented in this tool. Molly, is there anything you'd like to add while I stumble over my words a little bit?
The overdrive report is the only other report without a location filter at this time, but we have requested it.
Yes, that is a little tricky since we have a couple different groups of Overdrive users and People's Advantage accounts, but hopefully they can get us something so that we can narrow this down a little bit. And then our last part of the tool is Market Watch. So Market Watch is an interesting tool because it's going to give you 6 different tabs at the top, and we will talk about these tabs. But what you're getting here with Market Watch is they're identifying patrons on a map, but by household, not by individual patron. And at this time, they are not pinpointed individually. They're clustered together based by your location. And you can see at the top of the screen, we have 3 tabs that have ADI in them, and the other ones are census tract. The ADI is considered the area of dominant influence. So this isn't your patron attached to your library necessarily. It's where your patrons or where patrons in CCS are going the most. So the outline of this map for, say, McHenry might not be or probably isn't their service area or even their census tract. It's where within the CCS system are patrons coming from to go to that library the most. Want to make sure, Molly, if you have anything to add before I keep going with this.
Um, no.
Okay. Area of
I
dominant
will watch
influence.
for questions though.
Okay. So this is probably the area of dominant influence within Market Watch is the one that we get the most questions about, because a lot of times, most of the time in library, we don't think about our service area in that way. We're thinking about our service areas by boundaries, by blocks, by maybe by certain census tracts, but this is really expanding that view so that you can see, where your patrons coming from. One thing that we've gotten a lot of requests for is like if we could overlay where your actual boundaries are on the map so that you get a sense of how far out are patrons from different areas coming into to come to my library. And so that is something that OrangeBoy has been talked to about and hopefully can add that to the multiple requests we've made to do some updating to the system.
And this is our CCS wide Market Watch report. So everything that we'll look at in this standard report is really meant for comparison across CCS libraries. But what we're working with OrangeBoy on is individual instances of Market Watch for each library that will let you get more granular specific data about your ADI, your service area, your demographics. That's just meant for a single library view at a time versus this CCS wide comparison.
Yeah, so the example I was using before is that, you can see the Tri-State Tollway go through here, which I know that's where our offices are. But I don't know the exact boundaries of Vernon's library, and I'm not sure exactly where these streets fall. So it would be useful to get a little more granular information in here. But so right now, what you're looking at is all of the service area of CCS. And we don't currently have Wakanda or Rolling Meadows in this map, so they will show up once they're fully onboarded, but you might see some overlap into Wakanda and Rolling Meadows for usage. That's just because we don't have the data, so their patrons are registering in a different way in this tool.
Yes, their service areas are part of our larger CCS boundaries. but you won't see any patrons associated with those locations yet.
Right. So our next screen is the metrics by branch location ADI. So again, they're looking at that area of dominant influence. You can choose an individual library. Again, this really is meant to do that comparison across all the CCS libraries. But you can see if I've got market penetration shown. So what they're saying is with that area of dominant influence, 45% of households are using the library actively. And so you get a sense of things like households with populations of certain ages and also like Hispanic population. But again, this is at that dominant influence level. The same
Your
thing with the,
metrics
oh, sorry, go
your
ahead.
metrics are going to be everyone who lives in that area too. So the metrics report is going to show you information about everyone who lives in a defined area, and your clusters is where you're going to get information about library patrons specifically.
Right. So for example, I'm on new cardholders. I hover over Warren Newport, and so I can see that 4.61% of those are new cardholders, and how many people are in that cluster versus total active new card or total active cardholders. So it's a nice comparison, but again, it's on that ADI boundaries. Interesting information. We're still sort of like parsing out how useful it is on a CCS-wide basis. The metrics by census tract is now going to give you census information for your locations. And this is going to pull from the American Community Survey, Census Survey, which is 1 year. If there's 5-year data, they'll have that. And then they have that 10-year data. And so this again is, you can see market penetration. So this is based on individual census tract. So I'm just going to scroll in here a little bit. So it looks like Lake Forest, you have at least 4 or so different census tracts, 5 census tracts. And so you can see within those census tracts things like your market penetration, the median age, the active users, active households. Again, when you pick one of these, it's going to saturate the map. So the darker the saturation, the more value that's in there. And again, this is by your census tract. So, I mean, it could be a little more useful because it does at least break up your location by chunks. And so you get a sense of, well, how many active households do I have in the southwest corner of my census area? And you'll get some information that way if you're looking for location information, maybe to do, bring out the book bike or the book bike or whatever you might be using for outreach to come out to different communities. We also have your clusters by census tract. So again, if you want to see where those new card holders are or how many there are, they are not pinpointed individually on a map, but they are when you hover over that part of a census tract, then you're going to be able to see where those clusters are. So if I'm curious about my rising stars, it looks like there's quite a few rising stars in the northwest corner of Huntley. There's also one in here in Prospect Heights. So you can kind of get a sense of where those rising stars are. And again, it can be a very nice visualization to compare the different libraries across CCS. The last one is our new cardholder opportunities. This graph makes me chuckle a little bit just because it's really across all of CCS. And if we were to, just have you pick your library, it would just be one dot on this graph. But it's interesting to see. They're going to tell you if they think your outreach and your engagement should be maintained or grown. So you'll see when you hover over a point, it tells you the action. It gives you the total amount of households versus the total amount of active households, and then what that percentage of market penetration is. So if I lived within Indian Trails, I have 5 cardholders in my house, but we are counted as one household. And that is how they will do the total households versus active to get you that percentage of market penetration. So I'm going to pause, see if we have any questions or if Molly, if you wanted to add anything to what we've covered so far.
Don't have anything to add.
Okay. And it doesn't look like there's any other questions at this time. So I think what I will do is I will go back to our PowerPoint presentation and we can cover the remaining of our slides. I'll just do a quick, sorry guys. Okay.
All right, so some closing reminders. What is next for everybody? For the CCS team, we're going to be adding authentication, Wi-Fi, programming, gate count, and other e-content data sources to Savannah. So if you don't see the data that you're expecting to see in Savannah and you're not sure if your library has given us the credentials we need, feel free to open a help desk ticket or message me in the chat and we will let you know what we might be missing. We're also going to be distributing some training materials. So in addition to getting a copy of these slides, over the next 3 to 4 months, we're going to be distributing little bite-sized pieces of Savannah onboarding through CCS News. So that will start this week with just a reminder about how to log in, and we will build up and cover little tidbits about navigating or how to use different reports over those months. We're also going to be hosting virtual office hours. The first one will be next week. We'll make sure that all of those are listed in CCS News and in L2. You don't need to register ahead of time, but if you decide to log in, play around with the tool, you have questions you just aren't sure how to put into writing, or you just want to talk to me about Savannah, we'll have at least 4 opportunities over the next couple of months for you to drop in, ask a question, and leave during those open hours. Those will all be virtual, so you don't have to travel anywhere. We'll be working on custom report development. We will be building an online course. So we will keep that up to date as we add new data sources and reports to Savannah for ongoing asynchronous training. And then we will continue to have other training opportunities in the future. So we're planning to check in on a quarterly basis and offer some sort of training on what has changed in Savannah recently so that you are kept up to date and have opportunities to continue talking to us about how this tool is getting developed. For all of you, you, again, are not obligated to do anything if this is not something that is relevant or interesting for you to do directly. But if you want to continue to influence how we customize the tool with the OrangeBoy development team, you can log in and explore all of those standard reports we talked about today. Again, if you don't have access to Savannah, just open a help desk ticket. We'll make sure that we get you in. Um, you can think about if and how those standard reports are useful for your library. I see the question in the chat. Yes, these reports are mostly about your patrons, not your collections. Um, you can also explore the Savannah knowledge base, send us questions. If you discover that there's something that you need answered and you can't find it in the knowledge base, even if you figure it out yourself, please let us know because then we will tell OrangeBoy to add it and we can also add it to our CCS documentation to supplement that knowledge base because other libraries are probably asking the same question that you are. I have the email address here if you would like to contribute cat pictures to the login page as well, because that is the #1 request from our previous trainings. Then on the subject of help desk tickets, in addition to opening a help desk ticket, if you need some documentation that you can't find, if you need access or someone on your team needs access to Savannah, you can also open help desk tickets if there is a custom report that you already know you're interested in. So I can't promise that I will build it right away, but please feel free to get those items into our queue for development once we finish this next phase of implementation. So we've included a list of some potential questions to ask yourself as you're submitting those reports. This information is also on our OrangeBoy FAQ in addition to the training slides. Again, once complete, custom reports are going to show at the bottom of the dashboard, and we're really going to try to make sure that as we're building custom reports, if there's a way to generalize it so that it's useful for all the libraries, we're going to do that. But that doesn't mean that we can't do one-off requests that are really only valuable for you. I know everyone submitted a data inventory at the start of this project, so CCS does have a list of all the data sources that your library uses, but what we don't have is the relative priority of those data sources. So we're able to use that inventory to inform, alongside with recommendations from the OrangeBoy team, what sources should be included in this initial phase of implementation. But we don't know what's most important to you next for you specifically. So if there's a data source that isn't included in that initial set and it's really important for you, please open a help desk ticket to make sure that it's on our list. Um, Related to that, I just lost my train of thought. Nope, it's gone. Anyway, um, open help desk tickets for anything that you need, and we will work with you to make sure that you are getting the most value possible out of Savannah.
Yes, and I was just going to say, help desk tickets the best way to go. It'll get to whoever's the right person. Emails can get lost, so really stress that. And the question about primarily for patron reports, just remember it doesn't have patron level data. You won't be able to see a patron name or address. You cannot attach that an individual patron to a behavior. But if you're curious about the amount of patrons you have, if you want to do some correlations about maybe you did a card drive, you want to see how many patrons are still active, that type of information's here. If you need help making connections between the data in Savannah and data that we can pull out of Simply reports, you also can put in a ticket for that, and we can help sort of make some correlations and pull some information to help make the data make sense.
My email is here in case you need it for some reason. Um, Help desk tickets are a great way for us to keep track of the work. Again, we're going to be distributing additional onboarding materials through CCS News. Um, and the follow-up for this training session will include a brief survey about this training so that we can use that to inform our future Savannah trainings.
Yeah. For anyone signed up for this webinar that attended in person, you will receive an email from me directly, Molly Mansfield. It will have the slides. I'm also going to post the recording on YouTube, and I will see if I can post the slides in L2 to refer back to for viewers who were not able to attend today's session.
And we still have time, so if anyone does have questions, if you need help getting into your account, if you aren't sure what credentials your library has or has not submitted to us, or if you have questions about anything we discussed in training today, happy to stay on the call and get all of those questions answered. So please feel free to ask us.
So as we're waiting to see if there's other questions, I am going to go ahead and stop the recording. But we are still here and happy to take any questions.